Bassist and composer Peter Slavov is a major force in today's jazz world, known for his versatility, lyricism, and global reach. A native of Bulgaria and graduate of Berklee College of Music, Peter has performed in over 40 countries with legends like Joe Lovano, Quincy Jones, Danilo Perez, and Chucho Valdés. He's a longtime member of Lovano's Us Five and has been featured on acclaimed recordings for Blue Note and Grammy-nominated projects. His 2019 debut album, Little Stories, showcases his skills as both a composer and storyteller, while he continues to inspire students as a faculty member at Berklee. Peter, good to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you as well.
As I'm reading your bio, and it's such a great thing when you could say you teach at the college you went to. It's got to feel a little surreal at times, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the best places to go to school and to teach at. It's very special to me. It was the reason I came here, because I've been here for 25 years, and back when I was, an aspiring bassist in Bulgaria in the 90s, when I was very young, Berklee was probably the only school outside of the only school that we knew of outside of the US that taught jazz and contemporary music. And I think it's still one of the most, revered. Obviously, having been here, I'm aware of other schools, but yeah, Berklee is still a pretty good place, and they still support a lot of international students. Like they gave me a really good scholarship. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to make it.
So you had your
So
mindset on going there when from the beginning that's where you were going to study. When did you know that music was going to be your career? Because obviously, if you have to travel across the world to go to school, it's a huge commitment. So when did it happen for you where you knew sort of that aha moment with jazz?
I mean, I discovered jazz pretty late, but I was maybe 19 or 20. I
Mhm.
didn't play jazz before that. But I knew I wanted to be a musician from a very early age, because my dad was a musician. My dad was a really good musician and pretty well known. So I kind of grew up you know, around music at rehearsals, at concerts, and it looked very cool to me. So obviously, and then my parents had me like any good kid. I wasn't a good kid, but my parents had me like take piano lessons when I started at maybe I was 6 or 7, and I showed promise. So one thing led to another. Then I wasn't very serious about the piano, but I was trying to get into this high school for classical music just because it was a really cool high school to be at. And so my dad had the idea, you know what, the piano is not going great. Why don't you try switching to bass? You know, and it was almost prophetic, because I showed, I kind of it felt like the bass was the instrument for me. I immediately connected with the bass, and I first studied classical music, and then eventually I discovered jazz, which is funny because my dad only listened to jazz at home. Like I still have his, I mean, he's passed since, but like I still have like his like 500 LPs of like Coltrane, Miles, all that stuff. And I never, obviously as a kid, you try to be like, rebellious and listen, I listened to like Rage Against the Machine or whatever was, like Soundgarden, whatever was cool at the time. And I was like, well, jazz is lame. And then I suddenly discovered like something clicked, and I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot there. And so yeah, and eventually I felt like I started playing gigs, and I felt like I needed to kind of go to the next level. At the time, Bulgaria was economically really not a great place, or actually in any way, it wasn't a great place at the time. So it was really hard, but somehow my parents managed to like, you know, help me, and I sent a tape Actually, at the time, I sent a cassette tape in
Oh,
like
this was
90.
actually cassettes, not CDs.
Yes, yeah, I sent a cassette in 98 or 97 or 98, and then I additionally auditioned. They did auditions in Bulgaria in like late 98. So I got like two different scholarships that made one good scholarship. So I was able to come to Boston and start at Berklee. And eventually they gave me a full scholarship, which I'll be eternally grateful for. I mean, helped a lot. But yeah, it was hard, but also like a great experience to go. I mean, I wanted to come to America because jazz is an American art form, right? Like, why study anywhere else if you can, like, be here and study with, and even like see the masters in action, like go to a concert. I mean, that's something I missed back home. I mean, now there's festivals and stuff. People can see actual like great musicians, but back in those days, there were very few. Like I think in the 90s, maybe I saw Chick Corea, the Yellow Jackets, like very few acts, great acts, but very few.
Yeah, I feel like in the last 10 years or so, jazz has just become so much more mainstream among young people who get into music and then they start hearing more of the modern stuff that they're
Yeah.
exposed to maybe first. And I think it just becomes so much more popular to musicians who are just learning music in general.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So,
Uh,
as far as, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, some behind the scenes stuff because there's such a mystery about the life a jazz musician lives. What's something about your day to day as a working musician that you think people would be surprised to know if you told them?
well, I'm not sure, but I always try to practice every day, and I try to, I obsessed with finding like weaknesses in my playing. But that's actually pretty easy, You know how you record yourself, you listen to yourself, you're like, oh, this sucks.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean it's all I know the feeling.
yeah, but that gives you an idea of what you need to work on. So I have a list of stuff that I need to work on, and I try to get to it every day. Of course, being a grown up, sometimes it's really hard, but that's one thing. And the other thing is this is kind of funny. I mean, obviously I have other interests outside of music, but music pretty much takes like a big chunk of my time because it's a great profession in that you can do it professionally and still it's like a hobby. There's an element of like you're obsessed with it. You check out new music.
Yeah,
So
you just like doing it. Like it's just you just enjoy it.
yeah, I
I was
still
talking to my wife like 2 nights ago. I'm like, I'm like, well, I'm like, I just like put them like if I quit playing music, I would be so sad.
I know, yeah. Like it will be like I don't know. It's like an addiction. If you quit it, then you're gonna miss it. It's yeah, but it's a good addiction. Like it doesn't.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's not like
Totally.
you're not hurting yourself or anything.
No,
Um,
unless it's wrong, then you're hurting yourself, right?
yeah, yeah. So as far as you said that you're always trying to discover, weaknesses in your playing, and that's like you're being so honest with yourself about that because sometimes people like draw from their strengths and they're only going to do one thing, but when you talk about you're being honest with yourself when you say I'm going to look for my weaknesses and that takes a certain type of person to do that. But when it comes to like actually playing the music, it made me start to think about because you always hear people say like, "Oh, they're an honest player." What does playing honestly mean to you? Does it mean playing what you hear, like being in the moment? Like if I ask you, what does playing honestly mean?
I think it has to do more with like your approach to music in general than like a certain tune or like the way you improvise. I think I think I think ideally a musician's main goal should be a musical one, like not, yes, we want to make money, we want to make a living, we want to impress people. I mean, that comes with the territory, right? You perform on stage, at least a part of you is an egomaniac, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's you literally expect for other people to like sit down and listen to you play, right? But I feel that like your intent and your main goal should always be making good music. That to me, that's being honest, you know? Not again, I mean, if one of those other elements like trying to impress people or trying to really only thinking about how much money you're going to make, if that takes over, then you're not that honest.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. But you're right, is that, some part of us we liked that feeling of performing when the first time we did it, we got attention. And I mean, there is that part of us that's probably always there. We liked it on some level. And if we speak honestly about it, it's not a bad thing. I think it's humanizing.
No, it's part of our job.
Yeah.
It's part of our job. Because if we there's always this, and historically there's been always this like conflict between like the pure artistry and the reaction of the audience.
Mhm.
Remember like studying in classical music history, there was this like like how in the 19th century in Germany there were like two camps. There was the Brahms and the Wagner camp, and Wagner was like completely self-indulgent, and he didn't care about what the people thought. And Brahms was like, no, the audience is a big part of what we do. And obviously I go with Brahms on that. But there's a balance there, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean,
No, I totally understand what you're saying. And, I also was kind of curious, when we perform, sometimes, I mean, I had this experience a couple weeks ago, and I'd like to ask you about it, where I've been, just under a lot of stress and nothing was coming out on the instrument. It was just a train wreck, and I wasn't to do with lack of practice or anything, but that you can't have a perfect night. We're not robots, but how do you handle the music when, things don't seem to be clicking as well as they could, whether it's the room, the energy of the audience, maybe you feel a certain way. How do you handle that and navigate those situations?
I mean, with age, I've learned to kind of approach that kind of a situation from more of a like a psychological standpoint than a like a physical one,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
No, no,
Um,
definitely.
in that, sometimes it takes like a little adjustment. I mean, in your thinking and in your like just like how you physically approach the situation. Like with me, I start playing lighter and like try to just like go with the flow more. That sounds like such a cliche, but like I try to go with the flow more and try to kind of feel the room, or try to trying to meditate on a different aspect. Whatever was not working, you meditate on something else, right? And I do that when I listen to music too. Like I could listen to the same recording and meditate on different aspects of it, like the time field, the sound, the
You say
lines.
you're a little older, and I know you've been doing this for decades. How old are you again? How
I
old are
just
you?
turned 50.
Oh,
I just turned
50. Oh, wow,
Yeah,
half a
yeah,
century.
yeah, indeed. Just a couple of months ago. Yeah.
But you still sound as curious about it as you would when you were, maybe 10, 20 years ago. You're still as invested in it. It's a lifelong thing.
Oh man, yeah, totally. First and foremost, I'm a big fan of music, Like if I wasn't doing music, I would be listening to as much music as I listen to now. And I always had this fear that like, because I remember talking to older musicians, and some older musicians are like, you know what, I just don't have the nerves to listen to music anymore. Maybe once in a while. Man, I cannot do that. Like I have to listen to music all the time. And sometimes I'm even stuck, I have all this music. I don't want to listen to any of that, but I need to listen to some music. I need my fix. So I go out and start listening to something else. Or I go back to I've been going back to like rock stuff or hip hop stuff that I used to listen to in high school.
Mhm.
So I'm suddenly like, and it's funny how some of that stuff like holds up and some of it
You're
doesn't,
right. Yeah, I totally know what you're saying. Mhm.
but it gives you like a almost a new experience because you're a different person now. And to my surprise, a lot of the stuff that I used to listen to, actually it's really badass,
Yeah.
it's not jazz, it doesn't have the harmonic sophistication or whatever, but if you meditate on certain aspects of it, it's really great. It's really great stuff that
Is there
doesn't need to be complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there are when you think about that, are there any songs or albums that you maybe wish you played on? Just, not for credit, but just because you love them that much? Like what comes to mind?
You mean in what genre? Any genre?
Yeah, I mean, we could do any genre if you want.
I mean, any great jazz record I wish I played on. I actually a big time of my I learned a lot by playing along with records. I mean, the bass kind of gives you that option. You can play along with records, especially older recordings where like the bass is very low in the mix. You can definitely like. But actually, no, it turned out that it's a great exercise because you can, all these, especially older drummers, like each drummer is like its own rhythmic like galaxy, like on rhythmic planet or whatever. Like playing with Elvin, along with Elvin is one thing. Playing along with Tony Williams is a different thing. So I've started like telling my students to actually try to do that and try to even record themselves and see how if they can really make it work and make it swing. And but yeah, I wish I was on. Man, I wish I was just a fly on the wall on these recordings. Not even like playing. I wish I was there and like
Yeah,
wanted
I
to
would have
like.
loved to hear John Coltrane at the half note 1965. I would just love to
Oh
have
my
been there.
God.
I can't even
Yeah.
imagine it.
Well, people say it was like a religious experience, right?
Probably.
Uh, yeah. So yeah. I mean, I wish I knew what Coltrane said to the band when they're recording the record Crescent.
Ooh. Hmm.
I, I wish I knew what the charts looked like. If there were charts. Yeah, all of that. All of that. Yeah.
You've done so much playing, and when I read in your bio, over 40 countries. That's amazing. What's the out of all the years you've been playing? What do you think's the strangest gig you've ever played? Whether the location, the context, or the audience, and what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, usually the stranger gigs are like some of the smaller gigs. Early on, when you're getting your career together, you and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, actually in New York, a lot of great like you can play a wedding or a bar mitzvah or whatever, and you can play with a lot of great musicians.
New
Like
York,
there's
you
no
can
that.
in New York, you can get fired for a gig you do for free. That's how
Right.
brutal it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happened to me.
Yeah. I mean, but like some of the weirdest gigs or some of those like early gigs, like an over the top wedding where like they have a Marilyn Monroe impersonator with a pet crocodile on a leash or something. Like I mean, I've seen stuff like that. I mean, usually when you play, especially when you play with like big names, they kind of know how to avoid weird gigs.
Well, when you did those gigs, the ones that you talk about, like the wedding gigs, like with the Marilyn Monroe impersonator, like because a lot of jazz musicians they might get a little frustrated that they're doing them. Or did you just approach it with a sense of humor? Because it
Yeah.
seemed,
What can you do? Like
yeah.
it's another story to tell, right? Yeah. But yeah, I've seen like a lot of crazy things, but yeah, you usually like the higher the level that you work at, the more predictable the conditions are. Like in terms of like venue, sound, catering, hotels, like that the stuff because predictability is a good thing, especially if you're an older person playing music and flying all the time and all of that stuff. So yeah, a lot of those like really established artists don't like surprises.
Oh yeah, they want to know they want to know what time it is. They want to know everything that's going on. So just out of curiosity, I know that you mentioned that you were really into practicing, that it's something you do almost on a daily basis, but we don't have the time. What's something in your practice routine you don't skip, even if you only have 10 minutes? What's the most important thing for you?
First of all, I need to one of the reasons I practice so much now is that I didn't practice when I was younger, because I had certain talents and I just used them in a good way. And at one point I just realized, wait a minute, I have like a lot of things I need to work on, a lot of things that are not great. I don't want to be exposed like in the wrong, like at the wrong gig, right? Yeah. So I try to, I've really worked on creating a practicing routine in general. And again, a lot of it has to do with psychological devices to trick a lazy person like me into practicing, because the desire to practice alone is not enough, because sometimes you can feel overwhelmed. You can be like, okay, I lack in so many departments that, okay, I better not practice because it's giving me a headache. What I try to do is I try to make a list of things I need to do. I need to practice. And it's almost like a sports regimen, right? I mean, I have certain things that work for me as far as like warm up, and I break things down. Like for instance, warm up, I break it down into bowing, like with the bow, like playing scales for intonation, and just technical stuff with my pizzicato, like fingers and stuff like that. So I try to warm up, and then I just maybe take if I don't have any specific music to work on for a recording or a gig, I just take a standard that I know, so I don't need to struggle with like remembering the changes or whatever, and I work on whatever I need to work on, you know? And that may be a rhythmic thing, maybe a comping thing, maybe like an odd meter thing, or maybe just like some lick that I try to, I mean, yeah. Usually I feel working on a something simple, but being consistent at it helps other areas of your playing without you really like touching on them. It's just like they feed off each other, things. But I think it's mostly like a mental thing to just feel confident on your instrument.
Oh, definitely.
That's yeah.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about this, because I was actually going to ask you what happens if there's a song you've played hundreds of times, like how do you get it back, like get back the excitement for it, like just because you new ideas, I guess, right, that you're working on and running it through.
Yeah. That's one way. Also, maybe hearing a song or playing it with someone you never played it with.
Oh, that's great.
I remember really hating the song 4, just because, like the Miles Davis song 4, because as a bass player I've played it at jam sessions like a million times, right? And then one time when one of the first tours I did with Joe Lovano, he wanted to do a sound check. He was like, you know what, let's play 4. And man, he played it like
That was it.
it was like I played it for the first time. It was like, oh, okay, it's actually a good song. Yeah.
That's a great
So
answer.
yeah.
No, Peter, this has been such a great time talking with you for a little bit, and thanks so much for answering my questions, and I hope you
Absolutely.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.